You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak and Mr. Bob Harris. Gentlemen, it is week 3 already. Here we are, long off season. We got to savor every week because, as we know, the regular season flies, and it's amazing how quick it goes. So we enjoy it. Mr. Harris, what is going on in Albuquerque, New Mexico this evening?
It's hard to believe it's been like only a week since I last heard your dulcet tones. Very sexy voice for you, Justin. Not so much for Kyle.
No.
But man,
Prepubescent.
It's been You'll be 140 pounds if you do that. So it's been a little bit of an eventful week, right? So, going into week 3, we were, a lot of focus on Antonio Brown. He finally made his way onto the field, guys. Quick impression, Justin.
I think they got their guy. In spite of all the circus, the clown show and everything, they got their guy. I think they have simplified the playbook. I think that AB is here. I think that they've gotten Tom Brady a shiny toy and kind of, they gave this guy guaranteed money. Let's not forget that. They brought him in to play despite the charade. So he looked good. He looked good, and he looked good early.
And so he looked good as pretty much everyone we've seen play the Miami Dolphins has.
Right.
I felt like they maybe forced him the ball almost a little bit to get him into the mix. Not that I don't say that as a negative. I thought that's a good idea if you're going to have him, Kyle. And let's assume he carries forward. There are issues, and we'll all be watching for that in coming days. The investigation by the league is ongoing. They spoke with his accuser on Monday. I'm hearing for 10 hours. There's a second accuser. There's a lot going on with that. I don't want to get in. We've hashed through all the off-field stuff, and honestly, the NFL is going to do whatever the wind of public relations blows, whatever direction it blows them in that regard. So we'll wait and see on that. But assuming he stays on the field, Kyle, let's say he plays the rest of the season with the New England Patriots. In their hierarchy of receivers, where will he end up?
I'm going to say that I truly believe that he ends up as the number 1 receiver in terms of probably receptions and very possibly touchdowns. I think targets are still going to be favored to Julian Edelman, but he is catching a lot of low ADOT targets. And I could see Josh Gordon beating him out in touchdowns, but as far as I am concerned, Antonio Brown is still a top 3-4 receiver in the NFL. And pairing that with Tom Brady, I'm sure we will get some dud weeks where Julian Edelman gets 10 targets, James White pulls off 8 targets, Josh Gordon scraps a touchdown, and AB kind of nearly blanks you. That's going to happen with the amount of incredible talent on this team. But nothing says to me that AB isn't the most talented. The last time we saw him, he was still one of the best players in the league. You pair him with Tom Brady, I'm not sure how we don't see fireworks, even if on a more inconsistent basis, purely based on volume, going from Pittsburgh and then for the offseason, Oakland, where you expect him to just absolutely dominate his competition. His only competition in those 2 teams was Juju Smith-Schuster, who was a second-year player at the time. They were still working him into the offense, whereas now his competition is much greater in Josh Gordon, who was arguably the best receiver in the league a handful of years ago, and Julian Edelman, one of the best players out of the slot. So volume-wise, I still think it's questionable, but efficiency and production-wise, I think he's got a good chance to lead this team.
Correct take there by you. Tom Brady, Justin, at the end of the season, where is he among all fantasy quarterbacks?
Wow, you could get him on the cheap.
But where does he end up? I don't care where you got him.
Yeah. I would
Top
say
10?
you have to. If this Antonio Brown situation works out, he plays every game the rest of the way with the Patriots. I see why not. I don't see why not. I would agree that Julian Edelman is going to get something needs to be said for the nonverbal communication with Julian Edelman. So I think he's still your go-to, and as far as how confident I am, because Josh Gordon brings some circus activity himself. But it's this is probably the best wide receiver core he's had at this age. Yeah, absolutely. And you got him on the cheap for sure. Absolutely top 10. Yeah.
If somebody's going to verbalize about nonverbal communication, it's going to be Justin Lonero, ladies and gentlemen. Right. You can count on him. So let's move on. Again, I mentioned it was a big injury week, big injuries at quarterback, and big changes at quarterback. We'll start out with Drew Brees. Suffered torn ligaments in his thumb, having surgery on Wednesday of this week in Los Angeles. Teddy Bridgewater looks shaky coming in. I mean, boy, he number one, and I'm, I don't mean to be negative about a player's physique, but, he's never looked like the most physical guy, right? And so how concerned are we, number one, about Bridgewater's ability to hold up to whatever beating he's going to take? And number two, more importantly, Kyle, how worried are you about guys named Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, physically speaking, right now we're at the apex of I don't want to say unathletic, but guys that you don't typically assume. They're not the 6'3", thick-built, power-armed guys when you get Baker, Kyler, Russell, all these guys. We're sort of seeing an influx of if you've got production in your history, highly efficient production, I don't really care your size. So that's something that's just hard for me to factor into my projections at all. But more importantly, he's just been I want to like Teddy Bridgewater after coming back from what is described as everyone says that saw it. It's one of the worst knee injuries you'll ever see. I want to like him, but I mean, it's simple. The fact of the matter is, he's a guy who averages under 7 yards per attempt throughout his career. A 3.2, that's well below Marcus Mariota touchdown rate, and we all dog Marcus Mariota for being the ultimate game manager. He's kind of a guy who sort of comps to Teddy Bridgewater in my mind. I'm not awfully enthused about this offense. I think Michael Thomas's volume, as we saw last week, is probably still safe. I think it's more of the ancillary weapons. I pretty much have no interest now in Ted Ginn, no interest now in Traquan Smith, which is going to hurt my best ball shares, but it is what it is. Alvin Kamara is particularly concerning to me because I think throughout Drew Brees' tenure, he's recognized the value of just taking the free yards by dumping off to his running backs, really to the extent that no other quarterback does except maybe Tom Brady. So I'm a bit concerned about Alvin Kamara. My only glimmer of hope is that he's still dominating the carries in terms of the percentage of backfield carries. So I like that, and I don't expect Latavius Murray to eat into the market share of targets at all. But going forward, I think he's come shortly. He lived in that tier of top 2 to 3 running backs for all of a handful of days. Now he's sort of in that second tier. Now I'll say with probably Dalvin Cook at this point himself. I think you could put maybe an argument for David Johnson there if this offense finally starts scoring some touchdowns.
Right, and I kind of agree with pretty much all of that, especially the players below the top tier. For you, Justin, Michael Thomas, how big of a concern?
Well, he's going to get his share of targets. I mean, if you watched Teddy Bridgewater the other day, he just stared him down. But if you're a defensive coordinator, you're going to notice that during your game plan. I mean, the thing about Bridgewater is it was a good story. I talked to Kirk Herbstreit a couple of years ago. He was the most NFL-ready guy with Derek Carr in that class, and it just has not the opportunity. Like Kyle said, the injury and then opportunity. It's a bit of a sad story because we want to like Teddy Bridgewater. And I would tend to agree as well. The guys like Ted Ginn and the Murrays of the world, they kind of go away because I think that Teddy Bridgewater is going to lead. I would think that Teddy Bridgewater would use Alvin Kamara as that safety valve, and it would be dump off central. So I'm not going to count out Alvin Kamara's production or Michael Thomas at this point. I think it might, it could potentially help him in a target sense, in target share sense. Kamara could have 10 receptions every week, and Michael Thomas could have 15 targets. So it's not true. He's not Drew Brees, but I'm not going to own him in DFS, and I'm certainly not going to go out of my way to own him in redrafts.
Here's the hope, is that a full week of practice running the first team offense will have an impact, right? I mean, we were all hoping that. Talked to Jake Seeley from The Athletic today. He was theorizing, just hypothesizing, throwing out there, what if the Saints go back to a defense-first approach and a run-heavier approach? Right. And we go back to the time Alvin Kamara was a 40% of the workload guy. Right. And that's pretty mortifying. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm with you guys. I think this is maybe leans a little more heavily on Kamara as a receiver. Maybe we do, though, see a little more Latavius Murray and a more focus on hoping their defense holds them up and carries them through. That won't be the case, I don't think, in Pittsburgh. Now, Ben Roethlisberger, elbow injury, will have surgery, hopes to return next year, but he's on IR, season over. Young Mason Rudolph comes in and takes over. I was just glancing at the stats. Mason Rudolph played, about 3/4 of that game? He is already within 2 points of Ben Roethlisberger's season totals in fantasy.
Right.
So I'll start with you, Kyle. Some thoughts for me quickly. Maybe a little more run heavy approach. They're not going to get that 600 plus attempts. Hopefully, maybe they try to be a little more creative. But I guess the questions I'm already getting today. For example, should I start Marquise Brown over Juju Smith-Schuster this week? Right. So I mean, that's the level of panic we're at. Talk people off the ledge.
Yeah, I think that Mason Rudolph is a very interesting prospect. I thought he was a top 3 pure passer in the draft class he came out of, as opposed to, guys like Josh Allen, who, as a fantasy quarterback, you expect more from Josh Allen because the dude's going to run the ball 10 times. But Mason Rudolph, college QBR, 88th percentile, college yards per attempt, well over 10, nearing 11, 97th percentile. He was performing at a relatively young age, right around 20 years old. He has a lot of the hallmarks of a starting level NFL quarterback. I'm not going to say I think he's, the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger, but he seems like a well above average backup quarterback based on what he did in college. So I think there is still a glimmer of hope. And I also think we could just see, as we expected, Juju Smith-Schuster dominate the targets. And like you said, I think it is less likely to expect Pittsburgh to go to this super run-heavy approach just because in the past year they were, I believe, the second pass-heaviest team. Ben Roethlisberger was top 5 all-time in passing attempts. So, they're not going to hit those marks, but their defense hasn't looked great. I mean, they got squashed by the Patriots. The Russell Wilson-led Seahawks didn't have too much of a trouble scoring on them. Yeah, they added Minkah Fitzpatrick, but one defensive player isn't going to change the world for them. So they're going to be in some negative game script. I like Mason Rudolph. I like his weapons. I think he is, especially if you're playing in 2 quarterback superflex leagues, he is the single best ad. He's the ad of the year so far on what has been a pass-heavy team in past years with, I still think, very good weapons. He's got a connection with James Washington, given that they played college together and then they played all of preseason together. I mean, he is the ultimate complete fab buster in terms of 2 quarterback superflex leagues. Or I guess if you're the person who has suffered through Andrew Luck and Ben Roethlisberger or Andrew Luck and Sam Darnold, any combination of these guys, you have to blow the whole fab on him, or at least ensure that you're getting the next quarterback who will start for the entire season, because we've got Luke Falk and Gardner Minshew, both of whom, they're starting quarterbacks, and if you need that, you have to bid something, but neither of them are long-term starters. The same can be said for Teddy Bridgewater. This is the only guy who we literally know for a fact will be starting the rest of the season, barring an injury or, if he is that bad, he gets, outplayed by Devlin Hodges or whatever.
Right. I feel like it's a couple thoughts on that. Did the Steelers know that the elbow was unraveling when they traded Josh Dobbs away? It sounds like, that there had been some tendonitis issues. Not that anyone knew that this was going to happen, but clearly they were all in on Rudolph. You mentioned a couple of those other guys, the stash, Gardner Minshew, who is now carrying me in the Scott Fishbowl League. Fortunately, I spent every free agent shekel I had to get him because I also have Nick Foles. But beyond that, I kind of think, Bridgewater has a shelf life, so you're not going to invest heavily in him. You don't know what you're going to get, but we're going to talk about the rookie right now, Justin. Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones gets the nod. It seemed like it was going to be coming at some point. None of us really expected it this soon. What does this mean to the fortunes of Saquon Barkley and the receiving core?
It doesn't mean much. In short, okay, we're all set tonight, guys. I mean, look, I think.
So you're a fan?
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the Giants either. I mean, outside of Saquon Barkley, you have Evan Ingram.
Well, no, everyone knows you're a fan of the Patriots. It's clear.
Right. But in terms of development, and I think this organization has to start looking into the future. I mean, the end could have been last year or the year before potentially for Eli Manning. This was inevitable. So Jones, let's see what the kid has throw him into the flames, and that's the only way he's going to learn and get better. So they're going to be a bad team. We know that much. We know who Saquon Barkley is. But as far as Evan Ingram, I mean, I'm getting the Evan Ingram vibe of his rookie season where he could just get absolutely peppered. Your boy Cody Latimer is hurt now. Kyle, I know Sterling Shepard is there. It's a terrible offense. So but again, the only way for a guy like Jones to learn is to do it, and I think that they want him to be the future of the organization. So as far as a fantasy angle, I have zero interest, and I might have zero interest even if he was at minimum salary on DraftKings. I think a guy like Mason Rudolph is definitely the most alluring of that crowd that we've mentioned so far tonight.
Kyle,
Bob,
you sure? Go ahead.
Bob, I only have 2 quarterbacks in Scott Fishbowl. You are the experienced master of having to bid on quarterbacks. What am I bidding on Mason Rudolph? I've got 80% of that right now. 100?
Oh, you're not gonna get him. You're not.
Seriously?
If you don't
Okay,
have all your money, you're not getting him.
All right, I'll blow 100 then. All right, that's all. You were just listening to, and nobody will hear this because waivers will have run. But you just watched me almost live about, let's call it less than 10 hours, or probably 9 hours. Live bid Mason Rudolph 100. So that's
Look,
it.
I've missed out on 2 quarterbacks prior to not getting Gardner Minshew, and I wasn't going to miss out on him. And it worked out well because I had Foles. So that was the only thing. But, it's going to be slim pickings the rest of the way. That's for sure.
I have Kirk Cousins.
Oh, well,
wow, that would be great getting 10 pass attempts a game.
It's great. It's great to know that things can be worse than they are for me. I'm in a Superflex Dynasty League with a handful of heavy hitters. And I have been chasing quarterbacks ever since Andrew Luck retired. And now my second quarterback, Drew Brees, has gone down. I'm 2-0 in this league, but I think those days are moving fast. I'm about to get taken to the Woodhouse, out back by these guys as I try to find.
And what's up with Cam Newton? What's up with Cam Newton?
Well, I'm going to get to that. Well, so I'm going to go to Kyle on this since he has the same first name as the guy who might replace Kyle. Cam Newton, Kyle Allen, and for no other reason than that. Look, here's the thing with Cam Newton. We have an issue with 2 issues. Number one, he's not healthy right now, not practicing Tuesday, aggravated the foot injury. That is obviously a concern. But I think the concerns are broader than that, and I don't know that Kyle Allen is the answer. Maybe Will Grier is not the answer either. Maybe there is no answer there. They're asking Cam Newton to go from being a run-first guy or a run-heavy guy to a pocket passer. It turns out he's a pocket passer who can't throw deep. What's going on with the Panthers, and how bad is this going to hose people with Christian McCaffrey?
Honestly, I'm not, he is the one player on this team I am not really concerned about, given that we saw, last week, if Cam is healthy, I don't think he's going to be able to throw deep. He just looks almost physically incapable of really hitting those deep bombs like he was years ago. So I think they're going to have to turn to the short passes. That's something we saw last week. I want to say Curtis Samuel had over 200 air yards and completely bricked that week, last week. So he's of course if Cam attempts to throw the ball deep, you're going to get a lot of air yards, but he might be one of the reasons that, he might be this year's, him and Devontae Parker could be this year's redacted, where the air yards just don't matter because they're getting passes from a quarterback that sucks, or in Devontae Parker's case, he might be the bad player. But, so for me, I am looking, if Cam Newton is playing, I am looking at the short A-dot guys. Obviously it's Christian McCaffrey, but in terms of receivers, it is more DJ Moore over Curtis Samuel. So this for me is might be the death knells of Curtis Samuel, and it still shouldn't be the worst for honestly, Kyle Allen could come and throw a few deep bombs to Curtis Samuel, and people will be saying that Curtis Samuel is better with Kyle Allen just because he physically is capable of throwing the ball. And Cam Newton, I'm not playing him at all anymore. I will tell you his lowest 2 rushing totals in a game that he just played. He didn't even have to finish the game, where I believe it's -3 and 0. His rushing totals this season, -3 and 0. It is the worst rushing game he's had, and tied with a handful of other games for the second worst rushing game he's had. This foot injury seems to be lingering, so I don't know if we see the rushing Cam as of years past. Cam Newton, if he doesn't play this week, is cuttable to me.
Justin, no matter who the quarterback is in Carolina, you're playing Greg Olsen this week, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I tend to believe absolutely. I mean, I could see him be a safety blanket for either of these guys. And Cam Newton is showing shades of Colin Kaepernick as far as going through his progressions. I mean, I think it hurts the development obviously if Cam Newton is sidelined, he's not Cam Newton. It's going to slow down the development of guys like Samuel and DJ Moore. And obviously these are guys that have potentially beautiful careers in the NFL. Something about Cam Newton, it looks as his priorities are more on his wardrobe than anything else. But it is
like you. Bob, I mean, you take one to know one there, right?
Exactly. But this is unusual. This is unusual because you said it often, and it's the truth. Cam Newton was their best goal line running back for a number of years, and you take that away from him, and now he has to be a pocket quarterback, and it's just not. Right. It's something is wrong, and it's evident. And I don't know if it's the beginning of the end. I don't want to say that, but it's not good.
But it's worth asking the question. Look, we always tend to look, at the narrow band in front of us, and that tends to shade us. But I think this is a broader issue than what we've seen dating back to his first shoulder problem. So now that he's having trouble with keeping up with the mobility end, it's an issue. And I mentioned the Greg Olsen thing. I mean, does anyone else think it's really weird that Arizona has never figured out how to either use tight ends or defend them, regardless of coaching staff or personnel? I mean, it's like, what the hell's going on there?
It's unbelievable. Perfect matchup.
One of life's mysteries that we'll never solve. I do want to mention the Jets, the Zach Zenner of quarterbacks, Luke Falk, will be taking over. And I just insulted Zach Zenner, and Kyle's going to lose his mind. Undoubtedly. Just in generally speaking, Sam Darnold's still aiming for week 5, so we've got that. Chris Herndon will be back then, but I think it's going to be rough sledding for one Le'Veon Bell. Think about last year, David Johnson. The workload is there. The production is, kind of there. At the end of the year, you're going to go, wow, the numbers are okay, but watching them is not going to be pleasant.
Right.
I also want to mention the Eagles. Looks like they'll be without Deshaun Jackson, may well be without Alshon Jeffrey as well, Dallas Goedert. They've got some issues injury-wise that we're going to have to watch, and we will watch. You'll hit the website throughout the week and keep up with all these things. I do want to hit the DFS side of things, and we'll kind of maybe go through these a little bit more quickly just to keep this thing listenable. But I'll start with you, Justin. Quarterbacks you're in on and one you're not in on.
Well, I think until Patrick Mahomes is over 8,500, you have to play him. You want to pay down. The guys in the middle that I've looked at are Matt Ryan. I like Matt Ryan on the road this week, and I like Kyler Murray at home as well. But if you do not play Patrick Mahomes, and I don't care if it's against Baltimore or who it's against, at his price, you're going to miss out, and that's the bottom line at this point. And even without Tyreek Hill, he's that good, as I noted last year, and you guys were hesitant about. The guy is just he's unbelievable. So let's skip the foreplay and get right into it. And I'm going to pay up for him. And if I'm a gun to my head, I have to pay in the middle. It's going to be Matt Ryan. I'm not going to screw around with the Brissetts of the world or the Derek Carrs this week or get cute with the Bridgewaters. It's going to be Patrick Mahomes or it's going to be Matt Ryan this week. And that's just as simple as that. And one more I'll give you is Josh Allen. We love the rushing equity from him. He's got a home game against the Cincinnati Bengals, sub 6K. I think that's all right, but it's Mahomes, it's Matt Ryan, week 3 for me at quarterback.
Kyle, and before I get in, I'll just say on Josh Allen. I mean, he was my on my DFS 3 and out as one of my ins last week. I think the thing about him is there's a great floor, but a huge ceiling as well, given his goal line rush. He's the new Cam Newton in terms of being goal line back.
He looks a little different.
Right, looks a little different, but it doesn't dress as nice. That's what I noticed.
Not nearly.
Kyle, run us through your quarterbacks this week.
In cash, I'm assuming if Cam Newton doesn't play, I still think we don't have a clue what is going on with that in terms of if he will play or not. Getting basically any quarterback at 4K flat, which Kyle Allen is pretty much free money. Like to get 3x, you need 12 points. That's like almost impossible for a quarterback to not do. And when you're playing the Arizona Cardinals, your team's going to run 60-plus plays just because of how fast-paced the Cardinals are. And on top of that, Carolina is actually tied with the Cardinals in plays run so far. I believe they're both tied at 4. This is like a really good game to stack. I think it's going to be a little low-owned relative to what it should be. So in cash, I love taking Kyle Allen if Cam Newton doesn't play. And in tournaments, regardless of who plays, I am getting all of that Kyler Murray. That's about it for me. I just think this game, in terms of pace, is going to be the fastest paced game of the slate, and it's not even going to be close. We're getting 2 top 5 teams in terms of how many plays they're running going at it. I just love stacking this game in as many ways as possible.
Well, what about Jameis Winston?
The problem is he sucks at football. He's awful.
Okay.
So, I mean, look, the trust, but we know he's going to have a huge game at some point.
Right.
Is that what you're looking for?
I'm waiting on it.
But if you wait for it, you're not going to get it because it's going to be gone and he's going to have another series of crappy games.
Right. Just you gravitate towards the weapons there, and he certainly has them. I thought he looked okay at Carolina, and Mike Evans is at a discount this week, so it's like I'm looking at Winston, and I'm gonna call it a hunch.
I hate to say this, I kind of agree with you on this. I think Winston is a guy. It's like you want to catch him while he's still due. And then not lose out, not chase the points after he has that big game. Kyle, running backs, break them down.
Running backs, as I talked about previously, like it's Christian McCaffrey. It's so Christian McCaffrey. This is the second time I've called Christian McCaffrey, and I'm going to say the second time I'm going to be right. Just the amount of plays you get in this game, plus the fact that Cam Newton is looking to throw these low A-dot because physically he's struggling to throw deep A-dot passes. It's all setting up for McCaffrey. He doesn't have to be like crazy efficient. If they know it's going to be a McCaffrey game, I'm sure they're going to be. The Arizona defense will be keying in on him. He's a guy who's capable of 10 receptions in a given game. Like I love his PPR, non-PPR, any sort of format. It's Christian McCaffrey, and I still think if you're looking at DraftKings, Dalvin Cook just isn't priced up high enough yet. He's 7,800. I want to say he's averaging like 20 carries on the dot, plus has a little reception equity, and like. I've talked about this in private circles. If there were to ever be a Tyreek Hill of running backs, it might be Dalvin Cook. I always think, you gotta fade last week's efficiency, and then he goes in and blows another 75-yard run. Like, you give a dude with this level of like playmaking ability 20 carries a game, he is extremely likely to hit a long run to the point where you kind of just have to say like his efficiency might actually be somewhat sticky week to week, relative to like basically any other running back on the slate. So Dalvin Cook, volume-wise, hasn't been priced up enough, let alone if you want to call it talent-wise or just playmaking ability-wise. Easily, I believe he's 7,800, has still not been priced up.
Yeah, it's a lack of respect, I tell you. And I mean, inability to see what this team is trying to do. It's become pretty obvious. If it wasn't obvious after the week one debacle, I mean, Kirk Cousins can't carry this team. Dalvin Cook can, and Mike Zimmer wants him to, and that's how it's going to be going forward as long as Dalvin Cook's in a locked and upright position. Justin, running backs for you, sir.
And we have touted Dalvin Cook all offseason. You said he might finish RB1, and I tend to agree, and that is their offensive identity. So it's going to be Alvin Kamara. I think you're seeing some similarities with Christian McCaffrey as far as being that type of safety valve. I don't know that Teddy Bridgewater can stretch the field. I think Kamara is going to bail out Bridgewater. You're getting a discount off of Christian McCaffrey with Kamara. I think he's going to bounce back. I think he's going to be under-owned. Dalvin Cook, you're not going to sit him at this point in time. Sub 8K for a guy that's going to get the football 25 times against Oakland at home. It's just smash spot. And oddly enough, boys, Austin Eckler is just a usage monster. It's kind of going like we thought it was. Austin Eckler would be a top 5 running back in the NFL 2019. Not really. I don't. It's no time to get off Austin Eckler at this point in time, just because of his usage and involvement in the passing game. So I'll be on Eckler. He's got a good matchup at home against the Texans. One more name I will throw out is Aaron Jones.
Yeah,
we're not seeing the Denver Broncos that we're accustomed to seeing as far as defensively. They've done nothing defensively. I think that Matt LaFleur is going to use Aaron Jones. They were adamant about Aaron Jones this offseason and using him. That is what Matt LaFleur does. And I can envision Aaron Jones having 25 touches week 3 at home against the Broncos and having a similar week. I'm not trying to chase points here, but we know Aaron Jones is talented. Similar to the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, it's not, obviously it's an Aaron Rodgers-led offense, but Devontae Adams is going to have problems in coverage. I think they're going to run the football quite a bit, and Aaron Jones is going to be 6,100. He'll pay off that week 3.
Yeah, I feel like as we look back on this week 1 is
that's where I'm at with running backs. I am not getting cute this week. Joe Mixon jumps out at you at 5,500, but how healthy is Joe Mixon, Bob?
How healthy is his offensive line? Less healthy than he is.
It's true.
And just to reiterate, I think, when we look back on this, the week one Aaron Jones is going to be the aberration. And going forward, I would expect a heavy workload as well. Wide receivers, Justin.
Wide receivers is a position we like to have fun at, for sure. And where I said I like Matt Ryan, I'm going to go right back to Julio Jones at 7,300. I think Adams is going to have issues in coverage. I think that obviously DeAndre Hopkins is DeAndre Hopkins, but you can find value at wide receiver, and you can find some elite wide receivers in the middle range at this point in time. I mentioned Mike Evans against the Giants. They're a bad football team. I think it could be a Mike Evans week. I love Kenny Golladay. I think Kenny Golladay is coming into his own. I think Kenny Golladay is one of these guys that's going to be a top 12, 15 wide receiver by the end of the season. So tonight, it's Golladay. It's Mike Evans. If I'm paying way down, I do like John Brown. We mentioned Josh Allen. I think John Brown's a great play. And he's not just that home run hitter anymore. There's been some consistency with John Brown. He's a home run hitter, but he's also a volume guy, which we haven't really seen over the course of his career. Kyle mentioned the Arizona Cardinals and stacking that game. I do have quite a bit of interest in the ageless Larry Fitzgerald, and obviously Christian Kirk is in that scope. Emmanuel Sanders, but if there's one more guy that I'm going to name, it's going to be Nelson Aguilar, thrusted into that wide receiver one spot with the injuries to Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson. This guy is coming to his own as far as being a really good, in my opinion, slot receiver on one of the better teams in the NFL. So with these injuries, we saw what happened last week. He screwed me probably a couple $1,000s because of that drop. But by default, sub 4K Nelson Aguilar, I'm in. And there are some other cheapos. I'll let Kyle talk about.
Let me just real quickly, Justin, are you any concerns that they might be forced to move him outside, and would that diminish his effectiveness for you?
I think he can handle it, and he did line up outside a little bit, depending on the set. This is a guy he's a polished NFL wide receiver. I think he goes, under his role is solidified on that Eagles offense, but we tend to gravitate towards the Deshaun Jacksons, the Alshon Jeffrey, and obviously Zach Ertz. So it's going forward for the next week or two, anyways. Your primary pass catchers are going to be, and you mentioned the injury to Dallas Goedert. It's going to be Zach Ertz. It's going to be Nelson Aguilar on a healthy Carson Wentz-led offense that, again, doesn't seem like they have much of a running game for what I can see. And outside the ageless Darren Sproles, and I don't know what the hell's going on as far as Jordan Howard and Sanders. So they're going to pass the ball. It's going to be Aguilar. It's going to be Zach Ertz going forward, and we pay for value. We shop for value, and he's jumping out at me.
Kyle, dial him in.
Yeah, I will just take, I think, 3 guys right now that I really love because I am mostly paying up for running back. The only receiver I love paying up for this week is Keenan Allen. Basically, when you look at, he was one of probably the 3, if not maybe only 2 guys last week to get over 200 air yards, and he had a good week. I want to say he brought in roughly 8 catches. I actually have a stat line right here. I was right. 8 catches, 98 yards. Oh, just missed out on that DraftKings 100-yard bonus. So you expect, the targets he's getting, 10 in week 1, 15 in week 2. Mike Williams probably still banged up. Obviously, Hunter Henry out. I expect this sort of usage to continue. Maybe not 200 air yards, but he's going to be a guy who is getting double-digit targets every game until people are treating him like a almost like a lock for 8 to 9 catches, which it doesn't seem like they are right now. It doesn't seem like pricing is right now, given that he is only 7K flat. I love the value you're getting on him this week. And then I'm paying down a lot because you kind of have to if you necessarily love Dalvin Cook, you love Christian McCaffrey, and if in cash I'm running Mason Rudolph, but in tournaments I'm running Kyler Murray. He's not the cheapest quarterback right now. So yeah, you have to pay down at wide receiver. For me, it's 2 guys. Devin Smith, he got a lot of run last week because Michael Gallup went out in the game, and he converted one into a long score. It was like a 50-yard touchdown. When you were getting, he's going to be a close to 100% snaps guy because he's going to be the second receiver on this team. When you were playing all of those snaps on, it's weird to say it, but on a Dallas Cowboys prolific passing offense, It's exciting. It is awesome
Prescott.
to see. They're still not throwing the ball at like crazy rates, but the way they're throwing efficiently, like Dak Prescott leading the league in yards per attempt, they don't have to. Like they are sort of Patriots-esque in that when they run the ball, it works, and when they pass the ball, it is hyper efficient under this Kellen Moore offense. So yeah, I want any part I can get of a player that at 3,400 on DraftKings is going to get almost all the snaps in an exciting Dak Prescott offense. I love it.
Humorous.
He had 8 different receivers last week. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. But I agree, Devin Smith is an exciting guy. We got a tight end.
Tight end is pretty much, I'm looking at 2 guys as well. And I think just the more you can narrow down your player pool, or at least create a core of players that then you mix in a lot of guys with outside of, that sort of is a way to build an advantage. If your core hits, you are bound to have a good week. And I think George Kittle is like the ultimate lock. Dropping down to 5,600, George Kittle was this offense scored 40-some points last week, and he just cannot seem to find the end zone. But what do we know? Touchdowns aren't sticky. Like, you want to buy volume, and George Kittle, I still anticipate to be one of the most volume-laden tight ends on the slate any given week. George Kittle at 5,600 is just like DraftKings is doing the classic like fantasy player season-long average dude overreaction, pricing him down to 5,600. And then we talked about it earlier, Greg Olsen. I believe the Cardinals are giving up the most points to opposing tight ends, and it's not particularly close. They've given up, I have it right here, 273 yards to opposing tight ends in 2 games. Closest behind them is Miami at 208. They've given up 3 scores, 23 targets, 17 catches. Like, this is the team you target. Seemingly, no matter, like you said, I'm not sure what happens in Arizona, but no matter who is the coaching staff, no matter who's on this defense, you just play the tight ends against Arizona. And now that we expect so many plays to be ran, I think Greg Olsen is one of the best plays on the slate.
And you, Justin?
I am with you. George is going home. I like George Kittle at 5,600. We don't know his chemistry quite yet with Jimmy Garoppolo, but at 5,600, I feel like you're forced to go there. I do like Evan Ingram. I think he has that wide receiver feel to him, but again, we don't know with Eli Manning sitting, we don't know rapport, so the unknown there. I think it's tough to get off Mark Andrews at this point in time. I mean, he is. Yeah. There could be some points in that game, and I think Mark Andrews. I hate to be redundant, but safety valve for Lamar Jackson as he was Baker Mayfield's at Oklahoma. So 4,600 seems too good for a guy that's getting the volume that he's getting. And how he can line up. And one more, obviously, Greg Olsen we love for obvious reasons. His price, he's healthy. He's a top 10 tight end when he is healthy and against the Arizona Cardinals. Kyle, we've been picking on Arizona defenses with tight ends when you were in diapers. So that's how long that's been going on. You know, it's just one of those things that's reoccurring. And Darren Waller is going to be tough for me to get off simply because, well, Tyrell Williams is a little dinged up. Obviously, AB is out of the equation. Dave Richer, CBS Sports, I was talking to him the other day. He said, he's talked to numerous people in the NFL world, and Darren Waller he's a real thing. He's a real thing, and he's going to be a centerpiece of this Oakland Raiders offense going forward. So I'm there mostly because there's no one else to throw to. But he's going to see 8 to 10 targets probably nearly every week. So for 4,100, there are several guys I have interest in. And one more guy, Big Vance McDonald. You have the revenge narrative there, 4,300. Could be some sloppiness in that game. How about some fantasy goodness on the same note? So there are some tight ends.
Chasing those touchdowns. That's what I like to see.
Exactly.
By the way, Waller is someone we've been talking about all offseason long. One of the reasons why is John Gruden's usage of Jared Cook last year.
Right.
Darren Waller is similar to Jared Cook, except faster, more athletic, younger, a better receiver, all the things you'd want him to be. So you combine those features with the usage and the what we've seen from John Gruden. Also on Andrews, my buddy Tristan Cockcroft at ESPN threw out the following: the most PPR fantasy points by a tight end through his team's first 2 games of a season since 1950. Andrews is number 5 on that list. Ben Coates number 1 in 1994. Rob Gronkowski in 2015 is number 2. Bob Shaw in 1950 is number 3. Pete Retzlaff in 1964. Jimmy Graham in 2014. and there's the 50 points for Mark Andrews at number 5. So historically speaking, Andrews is getting the job done. And I just keep wondering when we're going to quit, when we're going to stop saying that, wow, is that production sustainable for whether it's Andrews, Marquise Brown, whoever it is in that Baltimore offense. I think that ship is sailing our way, and we might want to get on it early. But anyhow, there we have it, guys. Let's close it out.
Defense. Let's go defense.
Oh, yeah.
You hate defense.
I hate defense.
He's trying to get rid of us.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I mean, defense is tough because I think last week, this week, basically every week, it's going to be, do you play whoever plays Miami?
Miami.
That is the decision point. If you go with the field, and in cash, I think you basically almost have to. Like, do you want your entire slate to rest on, did you play Miami, a highly variant position in defense? No, I think I can win by playing good value receivers. I don't know if I can win by choosing the best defense because there's a lot of variance that goes into it. So I'm going to roll with the field and play the Cowboys, who are like 20-point favorites or 18-point favorites. It's one of the most brutal spreads you'll see, especially given that it's not the Patriots who tend to have those spreads. I like them. If New England didn't crush last week, I think they would provide some leverage over the Dallas defense, but I think they're basically going to split all the high-end ownership. So if I'm paying down, I'm going the Chargers. Deshaun Watson is a guy who's been very prone to taking sacks. Sacks lead to turnovers. Turnovers lead to touchdowns. If you want to have the ultimate leverage play, the Chargers at home. Chargers at home doesn't mean as much as other teams at home, but it's still nice to not have to travel. So Chargers at home, I like them playing Houston. 2,500, good value for them. In cash, I think you have to play Dallas. In tournaments, I think Chargers defense is an interesting pivot, which will also save you a lot of money.
Give me a defense, Justin.
It's going to be the New England Patriots at home, and probably I'll have 100% ownership. I mean, this team is probably the best Patriots team we've seen and their defense is spectacular. So I'm going to save 500. I get the Cowboys ideology there, but it's going to be the Patriots at home there. The line is similar to the Cowboys line. I mean, they are going to absolutely dust the Jets. I'll be at the DraftKings suite eating lobster rolls and probably not paying attention by the second quarter. But it just makes too much sense. I mean, they're out. This is a football team, man, that is just on a mission, and I'm hearing a lot of that around here. So defensively,
I'm shocked that you're hearing good things about the Patriots around Boston.
Right, but it's just a different vibe. There's almost like animosity.
Look, I'm as not a fan of any team. I see what you're seeing with the Patriots. So,
right. Give me the Patriots.
Yeah, it's clear cut. And I'm kind of though with Kyle as well, or I'm kind of maybe not. I think whoever's playing Miami,
they're a bad football team.
Whoever's cheap and playing Miami, Price will come into play. But it's just, man, they are not playing well. The game script's not working in their favor. It's forcing them to play out of desperation. I don't think you could. Let me just ask this. Let's close out with this. If you had to play a Miami Dolphin this week, who would it be?
Oh, God, that's like if
I'm
I
going
had to punch myself
Williams
in the face 100 times, which side of my face would I choose?
Exactly.
I'm going to go with Devontae Parker because last week I believe he was one of the few 200 air yards guys. I tweeted about this. And he caught 0 passes. Last year, it was Kelvin Benjamin, who was Josh Hermsmeyer, been on the show before, listed as redacted, a guy who air yards are generally indicative of a fantasy point, and he kept getting the air yards and not scoring. That could easily be Devontae Parker, who is we know he's a bad receiver. You cannot be a Devontae Parker stan at this point and still feel like you have any sense of dignity. Because we know he's bad. It's been long enough in his career that we know he's not good. He's on a bad offense that's just getting crushed every single week. But, the process, trust the process tells me you play the dudes getting the air yards. So for me, it's Devontae Parker. But, I guess if you are stacking all of the, I like a good Dak, Devin Smith, Amari Cooper stack. The ultimate turning play is to run that back with Devontae Parker, but that's like a MME 150 lineup Millie Maker play.
It is totally correct if you are doing it with Preston Williams. Justin, give me one Dolphin.
Probably Irving Fryer or OJ McDuffie. A fitting choice. But yeah, I'm not going to jump off Kenyon Drake quite yet. It's a sad story. In fact, I'll go as far as saying I think industry colleague Anthony Amico said today on Twitter that he's never seen a football team this bad in his entire life. And I would tend to agree. It's just look, the GM is being smart here. They're selling the farm in order to build for the future. And it's, they're not going out saying let's lose, but they're certainly not trying to win. So it's going to be ugly from here on out. They're probably not going to win a game.
All right, now we've thrown the defenses and the Dolphins out under the bus here. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, if you want to find all of our work, Justin has digging through crates, right, Justin? You can catch that. Or
digging in the crates, Kyle.
Digging in the crates. I know.
We work at the same site. Get the name right, Kyle.
I'm doing 7 streams a day, 7 more articles throughout the week. It's hard to keep it all straight. But whatever it's called, you can find anything Justin writes at Justin Lonero. Bob Harris, I think you do maybe an article or 2 here or there, right? You can find him at Football Diehard. Myself at Kyle Tweets here. Find all the stuff we do. Of course, you can get updates on the pod and find out when we post it. Everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next week.